They thought the storm would hide them, that the sea, the rain, and the darkness would cloak their approach. But that night, as waves crashed against steel hulls, the hunters became the hunted. For the first time in the Pacific War, Japan's invisible wings were seen before they even struck. Radar, the silent revolution that changed everything. At the start of the Pacific Campaign, the Imperial Japanese Navy relied on stealth and precision. Their Zero fighters and long-range bombers ruled the skies, striking American fleets under cover of night or through tropical storms. To the Japanese, the weather was an ally, a curtain that hid their movements from the enemy's eyes. But what they didn't know was that deep inside American ships, sailors sat in dimly lit rooms filled with humming machines. Green screens pulsed faintly, tracking unseen movements in the distance. Every signal, every echo, every faint reflection from the sky was being read, translated into life and death decisions. By 1943, the Americans weren't blind anymore. They could see through the storm. Would Japan realize it in time, or would their faith in the shadows become their downfall? The first time radar truly changed the war came at sea, and it happened fast. In 1942, during the early months of the Pacific conflict, Japanese night attacks devastated Allied ships. Under the moonlight, Zero fighters and torpedo bombers appeared like ghosts, unleashing chaos before vanishing back into the clouds. Commanders believed these night raids gave them an unstoppable edge. But then came the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, and with it, a silent turning point. U.S. ships began detecting enemy aircraft long before they appeared. The sailors didn't need eyes anymore. They had the screen. Radar operators calmly announced, "Contacts inbound, 40 miles, closing fast." Pilots scrambled before the Japanese even cleared the horizon. Confusion gripped the Japanese command. How could the Americans know where they were? Was it coincidence, luck, or something far more sinister? Soon it became clear this wasn't luck. It was science. American destroyers and carriers now carried shipborne radar systems like the SG and CXAM, able to see through fog, darkness, and even storms. The Japanese attacks that once came as surprises now ended in burning wreckage, their bombers cut down by flak and interceptors waiting in perfect formation. For the first time, Japan's confidence in invisibility began to crack. Their mastery of stealth and speed was no longer enough. Something had changed, something they couldn't see, couldn't touch, but could feel with every lost aircraft. The Pacific was no longer theirs to control. By 1943, the U.S. Navy had turned radar from a tool into a weapon. What began as a handful of experimental systems evolved into a vast network of detection, coordination, and destruction. Every major ship, from aircraft carriers to tiny destroyer escorts, became part of a floating web of information. The Japanese still relied on the darkness. They sent their bombers through storm fronts and under moonless skies, confident that the Americans couldn't fight what they couldn't see. But this time, radar saw everything. When a Japanese strike group tried to approach a U.S. fleet near the Solomon Islands, radar screens lit up hours before the first plane came close. American fighters launched preemptively, guided by voices from radar operators who tracked every movement with calm precision. Bearing 240 degrees, altitude 6,000 feet, they're turning left. It wasn't just defense anymore, it was orchestration. The once invisible raids now became ambushes, not by Japan, but against them. Pilots who expected surprise instead flew straight into waiting American Hellcats, their formations torn apart before they could release a single bomb. And on the seas below, radar-directed guns roared to life. Even in pitch-black nights, shells met targets with frightening accuracy. The ocean, once a cloak for Japan's assaults, had become a spotlight exposing every move. It was in these moments that Japanese officers realized something chilling. Their enemy didn't sleep. American radar watched day and night, through rain, fog, and flame. The sky itself now belonged to machines that could see without eyes. By late 1944, the Pacific skies had changed forever. The U.S. Navy no longer feared the dark. It owned it. What once gave Japan the element of surprise had now become their silent executioner. Each time their bombers took off somewhere hundreds of miles away, an American radar dish began to turn. At Leyte Gulf, one of the largest naval battles in history, Japan threw everything it had left, battleships, carriers, kamikazes, into one desperate gamble, but radar erased even that final edge. U.S. ships detected their movements long before the enemy made contact. Aircraft were launched in perfect timing, carriers repositioned, and destroyers lay in wait like hunters who already knew where their prey would run. When the first Japanese waves arrived, they were met not by confusion, but by precision. Every attack was anticipated, every dive predicted, every move countered. To the radar operators deep inside those steel hulls, it was like watching the future unfold seconds before it happened. Japan's once lethal strategy of surprise and stealth had been neutralized, not by luck or brute strength, but by science and ingenuity. The same clouds and storms that had once concealed their approach now betrayed them, reflecting the invisible signals that guided the Americans straight to them. When the war ended, radar was no longer just a tool. It was a symbol, proof that information could win wars as surely as bullets and bombs. In the end, Japan didn't just lose the skies. They lost the shadows too. The storm they once hid behind had turned transparent, and from that moment on, no empire could ever again hide from the unseen eyes of technology. If this story made you see World War II in a new light, where silence, darkness, and storms could hide the truth anymore, then make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to World War Ashes. Here, every video peels back another layer of history, not just what happened, but how it felt, the fear, the ingenuity, the moments when humanity faced the edge of extinction and fought back with courage and invention. Drop a comment below. Which do you think wins wars, strength or technology? Because as radar proved, sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one you can't see. Stay tuned. More forgotten moments from the ashes of war are coming soon.